Good evening, everybody, and thank you for attending Healthy Mind and Healthy Life tonight. We have some viewers online, we have some viewers in the audience, and I appreciate your spending your evening with us and learning about some qualities about mindfulness, some skill sets about mindfulness, and our panelists' expertise. So tonight we have Molly from Wisconsin Power Yoga. Thank you for attending, Molly. We have Chad from the Wellness Point, Samantha from Simply Nourished, and Amanda from Credence Counseling. And they are going to speak to their expertise on how mindfulness works in their career, in their home life, and give you some skill sets on what can help you, especially during this time of Thanksgiving and next week when we spend time with family, and we need some good pointers of how to remain calm and then the holiday season. So I hope you enjoy tonight. Please, if you have any questions, viewers online, go in the chat room, put those questions out there. That's what we like. It's an open platform, and we're all set. So Molly.
Hello. Thank you so much. And thanks for the opportunity for letting us come and speak with everyone and share about what we do and maybe hopefully obviously share some insight, I guess, a little bit. So again, my name's Molly. I own with my business partner Wisconsin Power Yoga, and we are located over in Burlington, Wisconsin. So just down the road here from you guys. We're a newer business. We actually just opened our doors in our current location this March, but I just wanted to start by sharing a little bit about what we do, just to kind of open that. A lot of times we have to educate people on what our practice is, because it's a little different than what's around in the area. So at Wisconsin Power Yoga, we practice a synchronized vinyasa flow, which that sounds fancy, but all that really means is that we move and breathe together as a group through the yoga poses. And we also practice hot yoga. So every class is in a heated environment. So that's kind of like the overall picture of what we do. But everything we do in our yoga classes are extremely intentional, and we analyze a lot of it and we break it down. And we always work to find the different just scientific backed therapeutic best practices that yoga offers, and we implement those into our yoga class. So just for example, the breath of the class is one of the main focuses of what we do. So our goal through the yoga class, so we're incorporating a breath focus or breath awareness practice right into the yoga class, and it's constant for the whole hour. And that's really the goal of the class. So we tell you when you come to the studio that the yoga poses come second. Like, we're not as concerned about that. That'll come with practice and time. But the main focus is to breathe, controlled breath as well, and to breathe with the group. So that does a few different things right off the bat. Is right away it takes your focus. You have to pay attention to what you're doing while you're doing it. You'll hear us say that a lot too. Like, you have to focus on the movement of the class. You have to kind of listen to your neighbors, and we all do this together. And it creates a really cool environment when there's this single breath that powers the class. It's really powerful, actually. And it kind of gives you this energy as well, because you're going to be breathing more efficiently because you're taking bigger, fuller breaths throughout the class. And that's going to give you more power, more oxygen, more energy. So that's one of like the many elements of what we implement into our yoga class. So again, we like to really keep it, we always reference back to like just different science-based practices. So the breath is one. And then obviously coming with that is a meditation or mindfulness practice as well. So breath awareness is a mindfulness practice that's often taught in mindfulness-based stress reduction practices, MBSR it's called. One of our favorite quotes that we share, Jon Kabat-Zinn is one of the kind of grandfathers of mindfulness in modern day time. And he is the one who started mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, as a therapeutic practice. And his quote is about mindfulness is the practice of paying attention on purpose to a particular thing without judgment in the present moment. And so we really take that a lot in our yoga classes and try to implement that. So again, paying attention on purpose. So you're choosing to pay attention to what you're doing right now, on particular things. So on your breath, on the pose, on the feeling of your heart beating. You know, there's just different sensations that you'll feel in poses. So we'll talk about those in the class too. The big one is without judgment. Especially in a yoga class, that can be difficult. You definitely slip into the judgmental mind sometimes when you maybe didn't do something the way you wanted or thought you could, or if you're trying to in a balancing pose and you fall out. So quick, so easy to judge ourselves and make explanations. So we really focus on, we call it practicing instant forgiveness. So we'll tell you in the yoga class, if you fall out of the pose, like instantly forgive yourself, no hesitation, instantly let it go and come right back with your next inhale. Again, we'll bring it back to the breath. Use your next breath in to just start over. And that's the most important part of it all. And then again, so paying attention on purpose to a particular thing without judgment in the present moment is the last step. So again, obviously you have to pay attention to your breath when you're in this challenging class, when you're in this challenging environment. So it really gives you we think about it as this, like, I can sit here and talk to you all obviously all night about this. So I could sit and tell you about the Grand Canyon, or I can put you right in the middle of it. And that's really what our goal is as your teacher at Wisconsin Power Yoga, is to put you in the experience and let you practice it, because that's the only way. Meditation, mindfulness, mental health, all of it, it is a practice. It's one thing to know about it and to talk about it, but just like we work out our physical bodies, you also have to work out your mind. You have to practice concentration and not just be aware of how to do it, but taking the time to implement it and try it and see what happens and explore, where different things go and how to bring your focus back to what you're actually doing right now when it does wander and drift. So that's a lot of what we do in our classes. I'm trying to think what other. The heat is a question we get a lot. So I'll just briefly talk on that, because I know it makes people nervous a lot about coming to our classes, but just like the breath, it's intentional by all means. On the surface level, it makes you sweat a lot, and it feels really good. When you're done, you feel like you just had a kick butt workout and you sweat your butt off, and you kind of feel that physical detox from it. But again, just like the breath awareness, it makes you focus on what you're doing. So the heat just is like a layer. We kind of talk about our class as an obstacle course a lot. And so the goal of the obstacle course, we say, is to follow your breath throughout the whole course. And then the obstacles are the heat and the yoga poses. And so how are you going to move through the challenges, the heat? How are you going to move through the poses and stay focused? And that's with using your breath. So again, as your teacher, we guide you through all this throughout the whole class. And sounds like a lot, I feel like, on the front when you're sitting talking about it, but it all comes together really beautifully, and it's really powerful, and it's a great way to dedicate. I really love it because it's my hour dedication to a mindfulness practice and doing something where I'm literally just focusing on that 1 hour and leave everything else at the door. Everything else can wait for an hour. Sometimes it's really hard to detach from all that and the stress and your to-do lists and what you've got going on the next day, or something maybe that happened yesterday that I just keep rehashing. We try to really help people drop all that at the door and say, hey, that'll be there when you're done. There'll be a time when you might have to work through whatever that is. But for now, choose to drop that at the door and choose to be here with this class. let yourself just feel fully present. So that's really what we work towards. And
Can you,
yeah,
you're going to have to repeat my question
Yeah.
online, but can you give us an example on breathing? Is it
yeah,
in 1, 2, 3, out 1, 2, 3,
Ooh.
or do slower, or how
Yeah.
does it work?
yeah. I'm so she's asking about specific breathing. We've been diving into breath work recently, and we're so excited about it because there's so much amazing research out there right now, and there's a lot of books coming out right now, and a lot of people in the sports and endurance world and health world. I was wanting to ask you about this too as well, but chat over here. So about the benefits of breathing and addressing that. So, okay. So what we're working on with our students right now is specifically nasal breathing. So breathing in through your nose and out through your nose. So we'll guide you. We always kind of like give little instructions of how to do this. But the cool thing about it is, again, it takes your focus to do this. Like when you're changing the way you're naturally breathing, it's like changing a habit. Like it takes intention and it takes focus and concentration. So kind of a win-win for us in that way that we see it. But we like to take it, the breath throughout the class should be deep, steady breaths. It should never be an upper paced, should never be like a hyperventilating breath. We will always inform you when you come to your first class, especially like if you ever find you're trying to catch your breath, that means you need to take a break. So your breath is your guide in that way as well. Like if you feel like you can't breathe with the group with that steady, consistent breath throughout the class, that means you need to take a drink of water, come to your knees, let your heart rate lower back down. It should never be like forced. The class should always have, and it's hard sometimes with the people who like to come for the workout part, but we always have to help balance that for them a bit. So like the class should have like this ease to it. That's really beautiful that your breath will supply when you take nice, steady, full, deep breaths. So we've been trying to encourage a change in people's breath. So most people breathe backwards, which means they breathe up in their chest. It's just something scientists and different doctors have been noticing. So in actuality, our breath should come, our diaphragms are still working when we breathe up in our chest, but they're not working to their full capacity. That's what they've been finding. And so that's what we've been focusing on in our class, is to help kind of engage our diaphragms to their fullest extent, which is going to help you get more oxygen in, which is going to help you in your physical practice because it's going to give you more energy and more power, and it's going to make the flow feel easier as well. So yeah, the cool question, because we're really diving into that. My partner and I are really geeking out on all the on the science out there about all that. So it's been fun to start sharing that with our classes, and we've been just doing that for like the past 3 weeks now, and I'd say we already are seeing some really wonderful benefits especially for the people who've been coming to our studio for a while and are really comfortable with our flow. I had someone yesterday come up and say that she was really focusing on her breath and doing this big abdomen breath, using her, like what I was just speaking about, and how she felt so much stronger throughout the class. And I was like, yes. You get so excited when it starts to click for people. So yeah, that was great. So that's, I know you mentioned before, just little tips of things you can do at home. Definitely slowing your breath down. Sometimes I have to do when I get talking about what we do at our yoga studio, because I get so excited and passionate and love sharing about it. So sometimes I have to remind myself too. But yeah, just to notice your breath, especially in a situation when you start to feel uncomfortable. A lot of times in my class, I'll use this as a cue of, if you start to not like the way you feel, to move your attention to your breath. And that just has such a very kind of twofold calming effect. So maybe if we're at Thanksgiving and you start to not like how you feel about a situation or conversation, I think just like a really simple, basic tool that you could use is just to slow down and feel your breath for a moment and create a pause before you respond and react is a great place to start. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Was that enough? Yeah, thanks.
Greetings, y'all. My name's Chad. I am the owner, operator, and I guess the chiropractor at the Wellness Point. So my mission's pure. My heart's to serve. My delivery is very unorthodox. I'm looking at my wife right here. She said, "Don't embarrass me. Do not embarrass me today." But most people, when they hear me talk for the first time, they don't like me. But I promise you that you guys will get over that. So just wait to hit the thumbs down button on the video until it's all over. So what I do, so when Senta was talking, I just looked up the word mindful just to see what it meant. And it just means to be consciously aware of something, right? So if you're not mindful, if you're not consciously aware of something, the opposite of that would be like mind empty, right? Yeah. Like your mind is empty. You're just doing what somebody else tells you to do and you don't think about it. That's the opposite of being mindful. So what we do in our office is we just help people restore their health, right? We get it back because it was lost, because they didn't know what it was to begin with. So if I were to ask you guys, what's your most valuable asset? What do you think most people would tell me? I got two ladies next to me that are pregnant. What do you think their answer is? Their kid, right? But your kids, right? When you're going down on a plane, right? You're flying, and they're like, "Oh, we're going down." Who do they tell you to put the thing around your neck on first? The kids or the parent? Yourself, right? Because without you can't take care of what? Your most valuable asset, right? Which is your kids. So even though our kids are very, very valuable assets, if we don't have ourselves, if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of somebody else. And what happens now in society is we don't control our 24 inches. And then we think it's a genius idea to go out and say, "Hey, I'm going to go get married. I can't take care of myself. I'm going to go get married." And now that I'm married, I still can't take care of myself. And I don't know what my most valuable asset is, or being healthy. Him and, I'm going to get married, and then we're going to have kids. So I still can't take care of my 24 inches. I go marry another 24 inches, and then I go have a bunch of other 24 inches over here. And we wonder why we're in a healthcare crisis, right? So when I ask people what health is, what do you think most people tell me? If I ask you guys, what is health? Your body. Okay, so everybody has a body, so everybody's healthy. So a lack of a body, if you don't have a body, you're unhealthy? I thought that meant you're dead or non-existent. We're trying to be mindful here, right? Consciously aware of what our most valuable asset is. What is health? What do most people say it is? I'm healthy because I eat good, exercise, eat healthy, which causes you to look good and feel good. And if I look good and feel good, I have no symptoms, I must be healthy. 5 out of 6 Americans, you guys can raise your hand in here right now if you know somebody with heart disease, died of heart disease, is on hypertensive medication, recently had a stroke, or had one of the 800 forms of cancers. Anybody in here does not know somebody who's battled with that currently, you or somebody else close in your circle, not like a distant relative, but close. 5 out of 6 Americans will get heart disease or cancer in a lifetime. 5 out of 6, 84% of us. Can you see heart disease forming? Can you see it in a mirror? You go into a mirror, you're like, "Oh, I think I have congestive heart failure." I see it in a mirror. Can you see it forming? No. Do you feel it coming on? Do people go, "I think I'm gonna have a stroke in 3 days. I better prepare for this and get on some blood thinners." They get on blood thinners after they have it, right? So, what about cancer? You go, I feel 2 bad pancreatic cells starting to grow out of control and mutate. We typically feel it at stage 3 and stage 4, right? Not stage 0.5, right? So do you get diagnosed and then get sick? Or have you been sick and you couldn't feel it? You look good, you felt great, and then you get the diagnosis. Which one? So is looking good and feeling good a good definition of health? I'm healthy because I look good and feel good. So if that's not, and we're mindful of that, what is health? Which means doing things to keep your body functioning properly. So if we define health on how we function, what's the organ system inside your body that controls the function of everything, including being mindful? Your brain, right? So if something happens to your brain and your nervous system, what happens to the overall health of your body? Do you think you feel that right away? No. You know what's so ironic? You know, there's like I think there's 5 senses, right, in the human body. You know, the sight thing, the hearing thing, taste, smell, and touch, right? And like for the last, I told you guys weren't going to like me. The last like 18 months, they said, don't touch anybody. You know, stay 6 feet, don't touch anybody, don't hug anybody. So they take your sense of feel away. And then they, you know, because, you know, these people are going around blind. They don't have a vision. And without a vision, people perish. So they don't see what's going on. And when you try to tell them, they're deaf. And what's so ironic is that when you get the thing, it takes away your last 2 senses, your sense of smell and taste. And you got to wait for that thing to get back, you know, which isn't that ironic?
I haven't thought of that.
So if this thing controls us, and if we lose those senses, what do you think they do to us? They control us, right? Rather than us controlling our most valuable asset. So we work with the nervous system, right? We don't work with people's feelings, and we don't work with people's symptoms. That's what the drug system does. And if you've been looking at big pharma, now there's a time and place for it, right? You know, first aid medication, but it doesn't bring back function of the body. You don't get sick. People don't get heart disease because they lack a drug. People don't get cancer because they lack chemo. People don't have a headache because their body did not lack the production of Tylenol. That's just like, you know, I don't know, putting a Band-Aid over a cut, you know? So what we try to do is help to restore their function, right? And get them back to living the way that they were designed. And one of the things that where we have to understand is that like where the design goes wrong is typically where it all starts, right? Which is birth, right? So right now we just had our 3rd checkup, right? Up at Authentic. 4th checkup. I must have missed the first one. So the first 2, I missed the first 2. Mindful, conscious of that. So we were up there, and it was birth number 900 that they had this week, right? 900 births. And how many years have they been open? 6 years, 6 years, let's say. And how many of those do you think were transferred to go to the hospital because they forgot how to have birth? Like less than 10, right? Out of 900 births, less than 10% were transferred. And even when they're transferred, it doesn't mean they're going to be a C-section. And then you go to our hospital here in town, and 1 in 3 babies are born via C-section. And by design, normal, natural function, when mom's uterus is pushing the baby out, the head is being compressed, the neck is being compressed. And when you intervene or augment the birth process in any way, forceps, vacuum, or hands, they pull and tug on the baby's head. And what do you think that damages? Their feelings? Their spine. Right here, their brainstem, the vagus nerve, which is the brake system to the entire body. So if this thing controls and coordinates the function of all the organs in the body and how it works in response to its environment, and this thing is altered, what do you think happens to the growth and development of those organs? Because our heart is not grown to its full potential when we're born. Same with our immune system. It's not fully developed. Our lungs are not fully developed. What do you think happens? Do you think those organs get to their full potential or not? No. It's hindered. Do you think you feel that right away or not? No. Right. So that's when the disease process starts for most people. But like for like kids, you know, they might have an issue with their drainage system. So then their ears back up. And right, we go to the medical pediatrician and they'll tell us, hey, kids' ears are, more horizontal, the ear canal. So it's harder for them to drain as they get older, it becomes more vertical, and it can drain more, which is true, but it's only half the truth. And if we just kept telling people half the truth, that's no different than telling them a lie, right? So the other half of the truth is there's a muscle that surrounds the eustachian tube. It's called the tensor veli palatini muscle. You can Google it if you don't believe me. And that nerve is innervated by the upper cervical spine. When that nerve goes into spasm, just like if you have a muscle in spasm, what happens to the muscle if a nerve is irritated? It goes into spasm, right? Now you got a little tiny canal and this muscle's around it. What happens to the canal? Does it get bigger or smaller? Smaller. No matter if the ear canal is this way, or this way, it doesn't drain because that muscle is supposed to milk the fluid out of the ear and it's in spasm. So what do you think happens to the fluid in the ear? It backs up, right? Just like pond water versus, something you would see by a river. Which water is cleaner? Water that moves or water that sits stagnant? So now the stagnant water is sitting there. So what do you think grows? Bacteria, right? Because the water's not moving. We think it's a lack of antibiotics. So we go to the pediatrician when our kids are screaming late at night, 3 hours, 3 days in a row. We go to the medical doctor. What do they give you? Prescription drugs. And it's going to clear itself out in 6 days anyway. So when then we're told to take these things for 9 days because we don't want to create any superbugs, right? And is the antibiotic going to help that child's immune system or weaken it over time? Weaken it. So now the drainage system, did it get fixed or did they just kill? Did they just clean the water and left it stagnant? They did not solve the problem, right? They did not restore function. They wiped out the water. They wiped out the dirty water, but they did not restore function. You follow me? Drugs do not restore function. So then since their immune system is altered, right? So now they have a recurring water that's static and an immune system that's weakened. Are you going to have a higher chance of getting an ear infection or less chance of getting an ear infection? Higher chance. So now you get a recurrent ear infection, right? So then you go back in because it worked the first time, right? We think that it works. So then we go back in and we get what? Antibiotics. And what do they, and then you take that for 9 days, 12 days, whatever it is, you go home miraculously healed. And then what happens again? Third, repetitive ear infections. And then you go back in for the third one. What happens to that child's immune system? Going way down, right? They get a fourth ear infection. They say, hey, listen, these drugs aren't working. We don't want to keep using them. It can cause problems with the child's immune system. You're like, oh, thanks. You should have told me that on the first visit. You're like, well, that's because you skipped the first two, buddy. We would have told you, but you weren't there. And they're like, we only got drugs and surgery in our pocket, right? So we already used the drugs and it didn't work. We don't have good advice anymore. So now we're going to use surgery. And what do they do for ear infections? They put tubes in, right? So when you put a tube in a child's ear, does the pressure, does it spew out their ears? Because it drains where? Where does it drain? It drains south. So where does it go next? Into the sinuses, into the throat. So now you get all this gunk going into the sinuses and the throat. You guys know some kids that are battling with this right now, right? Oh, yeah. In the school system right now. So you get gunk into the sinuses and into the throat. And what do you get? It's a new body part. So it's not ear infection. It's called sinusitis, sinus infection. Because it's a new body part, we go back in for a antibiotic. They just told you 3 weeks ago that this thing's going to jack up your immune system. That's out the door because it's a different body part, right? So now you put this kid on antibiotics. His immune system is shot. The body's smart. It's intelligent. It's going to adapt to its environment, right? So this thing in our throat, you got these two little, like, what are those things in the back of your throat called right here? They're like, I don't have them. They ripped mine out as a kid. Tonsils. It's part of your lymphatic system. And when your immune system is being depleted, what do you think the army in your body is trying to do? It's trying to build back up. So what do you think happens to those tonsils? They get engorged, right? Because they're trying to build up the wall. It's a barrier. So now you go back into the doctor. You've been on 6 rounds of antibiotics. They already got tubes in. They're talking about other stuff. You got problems. They go, oh my gosh, look at these tonsils. These are the biggest tonsils I have ever seen in my life. Those are obviously there by mistake. We got to rip them out. So you go, this has been working. So might as well just take them out. They're obviously there by mistake. So you take them out. Now you got this line of defense, right? Had ear infections, sinus infections. His immune system is completely shot. So now every time he breathes, where does all that stuff go if you don't have a barrier? You don't have it goes right now when you breathe. It goes into and now that kid's got lifelong lung problems, pneumonia, respiratory issues. But don't worry, you guys. We got some preventable. We got some, treatment. So when does that stop? When did that stop? When do you stop that thing? Yeah, that's why we see kids in our office at such a young age, and we tell them about the birth process. It's traumatic. It can cause trauma to the skull, the spine, the brainstem. Don't wait until you have 15 symptoms. You can be subluxated. You can have stress in your nervous system and not feel it, right? Kids don't have to talk to us because we're not asking them where they hurt. When adults come to the office, we don't ask them where they hurt. We find the areas of misalignment that are fixated, causing nerve stress, causing dysfunction, and we just fix them. That's all we do as chiropractors. Now I got consent from this person at the office to share this story with you. So I'm going to share the story with you. So this kid, right? He was born C-section, yanked out by the head and neck. He was 9-pound, 10-ounce kid, and big baby, right? Mom probably didn't know any better. She got a bunch of information, bunch of downloads, and we always act on our information, whether that's good information or not. We act on it, right? And us parents, we just want to do what's best for our kids, no matter what, right? So I'm prefacing this whole thing and what happens, not to like badmouth parents. And if anybody's gone down this road, fine. You know, it's just some people act on bad information. It's not their fault. They just get they get the wrong programming. So he's born C-section, totally fine, growing up, doing fine. At 3, he starts getting these ear infections. So he goes down that same exact gauntlet that I was just telling you about. And ear infections, tonsils removed. At 5 years old, he ends up getting diagnosed with this lung condition that they said is not like asthma. He falls asleep at night, anywhere between 2 to 4 times a week. He wakes up with the inability to breathe. They don't know what to do. So his mom is driving him up to Madison, about twice a year, every 6 months. And they're like, we have no idea what's wrong with him. In the day when he has to breathe into the tubes, he can breathe into the tubes. He fails, but it's not bad. He doesn't fail bad. And they're like, we don't really know. But when he falls asleep and he kind of goes unconscious, his lungs kind of collapse, and then he can't breathe. So he has to bring air into his lungs. Like he has to, just like when you're trying to start to blow up a balloon, that first couple blows is real hard. And then once you get it open, now it's easy. That was the same thing that was happening in his lungs. They didn't have a diagnosis for it. And so they said, here, you just, I want you to take this pill in the morning, take this pill at night. You're going to have to do this, right? So every time he'd go home, he'd swallow this pill in the morning, swallow this pill at night. I'm unable, I'm unworthy, I'm unhealthy, I'm not like my friends, I'm not like, there's something wrong with this kid. He keeps telling himself this. For 6.5 to 7 years this happened. When he's 12, his mom's at one of these health fair things, right? At the mall, or I'm not sure where it was, but meets a chiropractor at this little booth, right? And they're over there talking, and so the chiropractor says to this kid's mom, "I can help your son." And the mom's false fragmented belief system of what a chiropractor does is neck pain, low back pain, stretch you out. I don't know, does my insurance cover it? Medicaid, Medicare, HMO, PPO, she's like, listen, we've tried everything and there's nothing that works. And the chiropractor told this kid's mom, if you have tried everything, then your son would be healthy again, because you weren't born healthy, you weren't born sick, you got sick. And if you can get sick, then you can get well, right? So her belief system was kind of just like a little rattled, she's like, oh my gosh, that was almost offensive, but sometimes when the truth hits people, they get really offended and they just kind of shut down. And other times when the truth hits people, it just kind of rattles them to change. And she's like, okay, obviously we didn't try everything, so we're going to see how this works. So, the mom, so the mom brings this kid into the chiropractor's office, does the workup, and starts in about a month. He was going in 3 times a week for a month. You know what happened? He couldn't breathe for 6 or 7 years. In a month, 3 times a week for a month. You know what happened? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Still taking drugs in the morning, still taking drugs at night, still waking up with the inability to breathe for another month. You know what happened 3 times a week for 2 months? Nothing. The disease process was there for far longer than 2 months. You can't expect an immediate fix, is what this chiropractor said. So they stayed committed, and thank God that they didn't quit because when I was 12, I weaned myself off of all the drugs, and my body healed itself of an incurable lung condition that they told me I was going to have for my entire life. There's no hope in that system. And I'm here to tell, I'm not saying that because I'm looking for pity or your sympathy or nothing. I'm just saying that I'm not anything special. And if my body can do it, then so can yours. That's it.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Sam. I'm a functional medicine dietitian and practitioner. And yeah, to kind of segue off what Chad went through, especially in the early stages of his lecture or talk, was my job is, I think typically as when I tell people what I do or that I'm a dietitian, they immediately think, okay, what's the best meal plan I should follow? Like, what's the secret diet? And I will say, like, yes, there are a lot of dietitians that practice very differently. And I'm one of them. I'm not, I would say I was trained in a very conventional manner. And through my experiences, both clinically and kind of outside of school, I've learned and evolved a ton with the way I practice now, especially with the way that I see clients and how I was seeing patients in the hospital setting, not getting better with the cookie cutter advice that I was trained to give. So in my private practice, I work one-on-one with clients of all ages. So as young as infants up until their more advanced years, and whether or not they're dealing with an acute issue or a chronic issue, it can really depend. I wouldn't say I have a typical clientele, but I mean, I would say more often I'm seeing women maybe between ages 20, even younger now, which is crazy, but 20 to 40. But at the end of the day, when I work with people both one-on-one and sometimes in group settings and things like that, my job, and I present this in the beginning, is my goal is to try to figure out and identify the root cause of what is going on versus addressing, addressing what maybe the diagnosis was, or addressing some acute symptoms, or let's give you a low acidic diet to help with your heartburn. That's not really addressing like why it's there in the first place. Why is the body producing these symptoms to cause that in the first place? So it can take a lot of time. It's a little bit of piecing together the puzzle. And I think kind of what Chad was mentioning is he sees a lot of practice members where he's doing a lot of restorative, like restoring the nervous system. And some of those practice members also see me. And my job, and what I really enjoy doing, is kind of doing the deep digging into helping people identify, potentially, if we can, piecing together this puzzle of why and what is going on, and why that's there, and potentially why this happened in the first place. Because a lot of people will say, well, how come a lot of people that I know my age and we eat similarly, or we have similar lifestyles, how come they have a very different health, report card than I do? And it's hard to say. But at the end of the day, we talk a lot about this bucket. Everybody has a bucket per se. And throughout our lifetime, from the beginning of our life, like Chad mentioned, like from how we were born, that's when that bucket starts to be, filled, whether with different stressors. And some of these stressors are unavoidable, and that's just life. But what I'm seeing a lot more now in practice, which is wild, at how often I'm seeing it, is I'm seeing it with younger people and younger women dealing with these overflowing buckets. And what I mean by that is, by the time they get to me, usually there's a major issue, either infertility, crazy hormone issues, severe gut issues, kids, heightened anxiety, depression, adults. It's really across the span, or across the board of what I see. And a lot of times it's not just one thing. It's a collection of things. And I think what's important to remind people, like Chad was mentioning, is our bodies all we contain different systems and organs and things, and it all works in a delicate balance of one another. So when I was even working clinically, and it's very easy for this to happen just the way the model is set up, and it's unfortunate, and I don't think it's intentional by all practitioners, but we start to become very siloed in how we treat the body, or how we care for the body, or how we look at systems or imbalances. So if a woman comes in with really high anxiety, a lot of times my clients are being told, well, it might be genetic, it's just part of aging. There's really no digging to say, this is not how we were designed. Like there's a reason why something is off. The same as, we could even go as far as even into depression. There's a lot of data and research that shows some really significant gut infections and pathogens and gut dysbiosis can contribute or be a major factor in, depressive symptoms, or like I said, anxiety, stress, things like that. So with clients, again, like I said, my goal is to do the digging and try to help piece together potential root causes of what could be going on. And we do utilize advanced functional labs, which are very different from what we can get in a conventional setting. They're definitely more of an investment of not only time, but also money. And then, kind of putting into play, how does that play a role in what my diet's going to look like now? Like, what do we need to take out? And truly, what I do, and I think there's such an emphasis lately, in the last 10 years even, society and marketing really feeds off of pain points of people. And for the most part, like the gut has gotten a ton of attention in the last 10, 15 years, which is great. But then it really gets extrapolated into like, follow this gut protocol, get these gut supplements, and it's just really, first of all, it's not individualized to that person, and it's not identifying the true root cause of that issue and addressing it in the right way. So depending on whatever it is, sometimes we'll implement advanced labs, depending on the readiness to change of that person, or kind of wherever they're at in their health and healing journey. Sometimes it's as simple as just optimizing what they're eating. Let's look at, are you eating enough? Are you eating enough protein? Are you drinking enough water? Like very, very basic things are often overlooked when we think of health, because it's so overwhelming. There's a lot of information. So when I go through protocols or just that digging process, I always love to remind my clients that if you came to me and you think that health is found in a food group or in just food, I really have to change your way of thinking. It's literally like, incorporating mindfulness, hence the topic of tonight, but restoring the nervous system, optimizing that, restoring and optimizing the way we think or how we detox. And I love that we have a hot yoga studio, Molly, here, because I like sweating and pooping and things like that are majorly important in how we detox toxins out of the body. So there's just lots of areas of health that interplay with one another that often get overlooked. And so part of my job as an integrative practitioner is to remind and educate my clients on the different ways that we can, optimize and, add these different pieces of the pie to really get them on their health and healing journey. And sometimes a lot of times that's even referring out to, whether it's mental health or counseling or therapy, like these are all pieces of the big picture of health. And I think, again, I've had clients where they're super exercisers, but their diet and stress is really, really poorly managed, or, their diet is beautiful, but they are so anxious and uptight about what they're eating and counting and weighing and measuring that stress, like their anxiety is just through the roof. So it's really finding this delicate, optimal balance for that person, unique to them, and not just kind of throwing cookie cutter approaches on everyone. So when we just kind of segueing into like the holiday season, I get these questions a lot where, oh man, I can't like implement changes because it's the holidays and I just like, it's just too much. So what I tell people is like, obviously I try to meet them where they're at. If they're wondering like, hey, how can I change some things like favorably in my life or lifestyle, but still enjoy my time with my family or nostalgic foods or whatever. And I want people to realize that our bodies were created very intentionally and very, in a way where when they're metabolically sound, you can have a day where you enjoy foods that you don't normally enjoy, or, do things a little out of the ordinary, and the body kind of returns back to that nice homeostasis on its own. What we start to see where the issues arise, and like Chad mentioned before, is this chronic, cycling of stressors or chronically ill or things like that. And that's where people start to get to the point where they can't even tolerate a day of eating, outside of their norm without feeling horrible the next day, or without this fear that it's going to reset some negative experience. So I think, again, it can be individual for every person and unique to them. So some basic things I would remind people of is, first and foremost, enjoy your time with family and through the holidays. I think if anybody's like me, like this time of year is very nostalgic for me. But again, use a checks and balance system if you can. When it comes to eating in general, every meal should have a nice source of protein. Think of lots of different colors that you can include on your plate, like fruits, veggies. There's really no science to it. It's just think basically, optimize those protein sources. If you can buy locally or get a variety of, fish, chicken, grass-fed beef, again, the variety and the quality of those proteins is going to be super important. And then when you're building that plate or that meal, incorporate a good, healthy fats. I think for so many years, fat was demonized, and we were trained that, cholesterol was this horrible thing and egg yolks are this horrible thing, when really it was the sugar industry was like more behind that than anything. So fat is your friend, and optimizing the quality and types of fat in your meals is really important. So like pastured butter, olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, nuts and seeds, avocado, all sorts of things. And again, variety is huge. And then as far as your carbohydrate sources, those would be, obviously the first priority should always be your fresh fruits and veggies. And if you can incorporate lots of different colors and variety and ways of preparing them, that's great. And then you can pulse in some of those more fun foods, outside of that. But if you kind of keep focused to those basics of your meal, that will really set you, it'll help keep you satisfied. You won't feel like having a crazy crash later. But I think it just allows people to still feel like they have some freedom to enjoy food. And I think there's so much stress and worry around food. When I meet some clients, they just have such a poor relationship with food in general, that part of my goal too is to get people back to basics, and to just realize that there was no food naturally found on this earth that was created faulty in a faulty way. It's just, optimizing amounts and, enjoying those foods. And then, again, back to basics, creating this nice foundational piece of health with optimal water, good protein, balance of macronutrients and things like that. And then, at the end of the day, if there's ever, people that really, again, like have some significant issues, or they want to dig deeper in their own health, if they do struggle with any, mind gut connection things like anxiety, depression, heightened stress, really, type A personalities, there's just a lot of anxiety there. We can certainly run some advanced, gut tests to see what's going on there, to see if there's dysbiosis, if there's pathogenic overgrowth, and really optimize, again, that gut health piece, because gut health is truly at the foundation of health. And if we kind of leave that unchecked, as we work up this nice pyramid of your unique biodynamic health status, a lot of other things won't come into rhythm until we address the gut. And so again, it's a simple Google search. You can find prebiotic and probiotic foods out there. They're, most of them are right in your produce aisle. But things like sauerkraut, pickles, like refrigerated pickles, kefir, aged cheese, all of these things, just basically the things you find on the perimeter of your grocery store. If you can start there, make some simple changes, start to address the stressors in your life, or, adapt a new exercise activity that you enjoy. Just these little changes over time will make a huge, huge impact. Otherwise, I think that's all I really have on my end. Of course, if there are questions, please feel free to ask me. you can always email me or contact me. Senta probably can get you in touch with me. And I have Instagram, so if you'd like to follow, or I try to share lots of helpful tips. I'm at simply.nourish.nutrition on Instagram. Thanks, guys.
Hi, everyone. I am Amanda, and I am a counseling intern at Credence Therapy. So when you think of mindfulness, my first question is, what does mindfulness mean to you? So for me personally, the first thing that I learned when I began my counseling schooling and began as an intern, I learned that before speaking, bring mindfulness to your intentions. So what message are you trying to get across? And what is your intention? And how do you want that to come across to people? Because most of the time you're speaking with, family, friends, loved ones, and they're a reflection of you. So, when you're angry and emotions are high, it's easy to say and do things that you'll later regret. So, like I said, personally, that was the first thing I started working on. Like, I want to be mindful about how I approach people, how I speak to people. And I want my message to come across with good intentions. So that was the first thing I thought of when I thought of mindfulness, is to ask yourself what it means to you. So during the day, obviously, we all have busy lives. Our schedules are crazy, and sometimes we're running around and dropping kids off and picking kids up and working and going to school. And we forget to check in with, what does my body need? What do I need right now? Did I have enough sleep last night? Do I need to get up and move around? Am I thirsty? Have I eaten today? And basically, what do you need to feel settled and to feel sound? How is my breathing? I know that got brought up earlier in the discussion, but it's so important. And just taking those deep breaths and taking a moment to ground yourself can make you feel so much better in those times of high stress. An area that many people struggle with, and it sounds like it should be easy, but it's not always easy, is an attitude of gratitude. So welcoming and embracing happiness. I don't know why, but it is. It's so difficult. But that really enables growth, and it helps you be present within the moment. So that is another thing I wanted to bring up too. So mindfulness is being present. So not focusing on your past, not focusing on the future. I do it. I'm sure a lot of other people do it. I'm concerned and worried what's going to happen next week. How am I going to handle the events tomorrow? So another way to ground yourself and be mindful is to think, what do I need right now in the present, the here and now? And appreciate the joy in your life. Appreciate your family, your friends, those connections, your relationships. A lot of times people don't think of those things and don't think about or consider the things they should be appreciative for. Let's see. Another area is to take control and unclench. I find myself, if I'm working on something, if I'm reading, I sometimes find my body is stiff. So just to stretch out and figure out, what do I need to unclench and to make myself comfortable again, and to be mindful of my posture and like get up and move around. That's a huge one. Sitting all day is hard on your body, but also your mind. Let's see. Accepting space to inspire you. So what that means for me, and I'm using myself as an example, but again, mindfulness is different for everybody. I am learning that downtime is good. I don't always need to be busy. I don't always need to be doing something, that it's okay to take a moment to breathe and take a break. Let's see. Physical time, as also we mentioned before, exercising, and not just physical activity, but focusing on your mind, as we mentioned with the yoga exercises. All of that is so beneficial to creating mindfulness and taking a break from outside stressors. Connecting time. We all need time with friends, social activities. They make us feel better, and they make us feel involved, in a sense of cohesion. So we need that, more than we might know. And it's so helpful to help us get back to the things that we need to focus on in our daily lives. So the benefits of mindfulness, it includes stress reduction. It helps improve focus. It improves our health in so many ways, physically, emotionally, and it's definitely not easy. Like I said in the beginning, it takes time and it takes patience and it takes work. But it does create better sleep, problem solving. It helps us with our creativity, and it also improves self-esteem. So that is all that I have.
All right, thank you, panelists. I appreciate everything. First and foremost, I wanted to ask audience any questions out there from what the panelists shared as of right now, and for you folks online, if you have any questions for us. Unfortunately, Chad had to step out, so he would not be able to answer any questions, but I'm sure Sam probably could as well for him if you folks have questions. And if we can't answer it, we'll make sure to reach out to Chad and he'll be able to assist with us. So, is there any questions as of right now? Anything online? Oh, yes, Mary Ellen.
And I think about being grateful for other things. But I just have not heard before about finding things we're grateful about ourselves. And I think when we talk about, giving ourselves some grace, that's a really important piece that we don't often think of when we think about gratitude.
So,
Yeah.
you would you like to repeat it?
Okay, and repeat the question?
Yes.
Okay, so the question was that a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough grace, and we're not we don't have gratitude for ourselves as much as we do for other people. And I think that is, it's a great point to bring up. And sorry, my mic was off, but I mentioned that it goes along the lines with forgiveness, and forgiving ourselves and giving ourselves grace when we make mistakes and when we need to do things over again. We're so programmed to think that that's a bad thing, and it's actually not a bad thing. It's a guide for to self-improve and to learn from our mistakes. So I hope that answered your question.
Any other questions? Anything online? Panelists, do you have any questions to ask each other? Because I know we spoke about in the very beginning that as they shared their expertise, it could follow through between them. Okay.
When we all connected last week briefly before the panel, and you spoke about working with children a little bit, and I thought that was really interesting. I was wondering if you could share a little snippet of that, and then just maybe like, obviously, young kids. This kind of comes like with a theme as a pregnant woman, and you go about. It comes up all the time. But anyways, maybe other people have young children at home too. Like, what's like a simple mindfulness like game or practice that you've found or have enjoyed that maybe someone could use at home?
Sure.
If you have anything off the top of your head.
So the question was, we met briefly last week and we completed introductions. And I mentioned that as part of my internship, I am working within the Elkhorn School District elementary schools. And so I've been working with young children on creating mindfulness. And I actually brought something that I've been using. So I'll show you and I'll show everyone. It's a book and it's called Breathe Like a Bear. And it includes mindfulness moments for kids to calm and feel focused. And one of the exercises in here that I've had actually pretty, where is it? I wanted to show it to you. The kids have actually been really receptive to it. And I don't know if it's because they love the illustrations or they just like the activity, but it's called Hot Chocolate. And it's hot chocolate breathing. And so you act as if you have a cup of hot chocolate in your hand. And I always ask if their hot chocolate has marshmallows. And the hot chocolate is too hot to drink. So we're going to smell the hot chocolate because we like the smell. So they breathe in through their nose, and then they're going to blow on the hot chocolate because they want to drink it, and they think they'll cool it off by doing that. So they breathe in through the nose, and then they breathe out through the mouth, and they do it slowly. So that is one of them that I use pretty commonly. Another one that we've done is my daughter and I created glitter jars. And so glitter jar or calming jar. And so you shake it up, and the point of it is if you're frustrated, you're upset, you're angry, shake it up, let the glitter fall. You can put confetti in it. And as the glitter falls, let them watch it, let them take a minute to do their breathing. And by the time all the glitter falls, they are able to feel calm, and watching the glitter sometimes is soothing for them. So I've brought that to a few sessions too. Not every technique works with every child, but for the most part, a lot of them do. I had some of the children just try to unscrew the cap and they wanted to see what was on the inside of the bottle. But I did have a couple of them really focus on their senses, and that was actually another activity that I did this week too, focusing on the five senses, that was mentioned too. And it's basically what can I see, what can I hear, what can I feel right now, what can I smell, and grounding yourself when those emotions are really high.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of things I've been working on.
So we
Actually do have in the queue or in the chat box, there is a viewer that loves the book that has that. And they also said, we have the CD in the book. Our son loves hot chocolate and the candle one. He likes the audio. Our daughter likes the book. She reads one or two at a time and leads us in the activities. So that is a great idea for having the child take the lead. So thank you. Unfortunately, our mute doesn't work altogether. If you wanted to share something else, it is greatly appreciated. We like sharing these techniques for everybody in the audience. Yeah.
Just a question. So we're the ones that have the read like a
Can
therapy
you-
CD and book, which is kind of ironic. But we've heard about, like, we're having a challenge, at least with the kids, is like doing the kind of mindfulness exercises versus like when they're really heightened. And it's when they're really heightened, you want them to go to that breathing place or that whatever, but they're just like so not able to or ready to do it. How do you manage that when you're trying to, when the kids are in a moment of panic or disarray or whatever, to get them to calm down and use the techniques they've learned through the mindfulness?
We couldn't hear you yet.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now, or do you want me to type
Sorry.
it? Should I type it?
We can hear you now. We're good. So
Oh,
sorry.
okay,
They got
sorry.
it.
So
Go ahead now. You got to start over though, okay?
I'm the one who wrote in about, we do have the CD and those CDs and books and love them and highly recommend them to everyone. But the challenge I think we have is I'd look for your advice on, you know, even though our kids like some of these mindfulness activities and books, when they're really heightened, like if they're really anxious or they're really scared or, you know, they just got in an argument with each other or whatever it might be, it's hard to get them to do the, you know, box breathing or remember your hot chocolate exercise or like, so what is your advice for, you know, in the heightened moment? Like, how do you get them to ground themselves or calm down in the moment of being heightened?
So, what I've done, I have a few children that I work with, and they've come to sessions upset, or they come to sessions and they don't want to share. I try to focus on them. So, what are your hobbies? What do you enjoy doing? What would you like to do today? And I kind of let them take the lead. And like last week, one of the children that I work with, we played hangman for an hour, but she left in a good place. And even though I had other things planned for the session, sometimes teaching them, and I'm learning this too, sometimes our planned sessions don't always go as planned. My planned activities, basically, everything goes back in my bag and we start from square one. And I think if they are content with it, that's progress. So that's what I've been doing. And so far it's been working. But again, every child is going to be different. Every client is going to be different. But if I try to focus on the positive aspects and things they enjoy doing, what else have we done? We worked with another child. We worked on Mad Gabs, and so we took turns writing silly poems, and she enjoyed it, and it's part of that helps build our relationship too. So they look forward to spending time with me and being with me, and even if we don't accomplish everything that I wanted to in that one session, it helps them with building trust and being able to hopefully share intimate details at a later point. I hope that answered your question.
Could I share a little bit on that too?
So I was gonna say, I don't know if the mic's still on, but I did send a note in the message
What's that?
chat. So that's helpful to me is like how you deal with it as a psychologist, but as a parent, like our kids do, it's every day a kid has some sort of heightened moment, right? You can't find your boots right before leaving for school and you're panicking. Your brother hit you or whatever. So like as a parent, how do you take them from a moment of crying and panic like in the moment to now you're capable of playing Hangman or capable of playing Mad Libs or redirecting them? Like, how do you take them from it's not fair, so and so hit me first, or whatever it might be, or I'll never find my boots before we have to leave for school, to
Yeah.
breathe or calm? Or what's your advice to a parent for taking them from panic to breathe like a bear?
Is it okay? I'm not a therapist by any means. I'm a yoga instructor, but I can.
Amanda, can you mic yours?
Yeah,
Sorry.
so it's okay. But I can speak about from my from the yoga background how we kind of view things. Sorry, there's a little reverb going on, so Ash is gonna come turn that off. So it's distracting my thoughts here.
There we go.
There, perfect. Okay. So, and I think it applies here to what you're speaking about. And again, like there's tools and these all don't work all the time by any means, especially with children. I have 2 toddlers. And so sometimes this backfires on me majorly, but sometimes it works successfully too. But so like in a meditation practice specifically that we teach at our studio is not to push bad feelings away, but instead to acknowledge those as well. So like there's no like difference between pleasant and unpleasant. Whichever one arises, whichever one comes in. Let's just use a meditation practice just as an example here. If you're in a meditation practice and you have an unpleasant thought or feeling, to not cover that up always, that it's coming up for a reason, and let yourself see that and acknowledge it. So, and then you kind of can play around with that in a way. And you let yourself, especially if it's an unpleasant thought or feeling or past experience, you try to just let it come in and burn. Because if you don't let it burn in that moment, you just end up keep pushing it down and it's going to keep coming back up. So that's something we kind of talk with sometimes with people when they have that experience in their meditation practice about what do I do? Do I put, there are times obviously too where it's like, this isn't the time right now. Like I'm not in a good place to let that burn, which is great as well. But I think sometimes too, just with your specific question with kids is like acknowledging that it's okay that they're feeling that way right now. Like, let's say they're having an argument. And sometimes I try this with my own kids, like acknowledging what they're feeling right now. Like, okay, I see right now, this is how you are feeling. And I see right now, this is how you are feeling. And let's see how we're handling that. This kind of have to simplify this even more for toddlers, but even just that simple step of saying, I see how you're feeling. Like, I see that you're feeling stressed for time because we're running late, and that's okay. Like, just telling them it's okay to feel that way. And I think that's an important message for kids, especially because they think that they're not supposed to feel that way. And it's okay. We all do. But it's how do you react to feeling that way? And that's, again, what we talk about in our yoga class a lot. Like, how are you going to handle that? How do you want to respond to that feeling? Are you going to get engulfed with it right now? Or should we choose to put on a shoe first? Like, like to kind of bring it back to about the kids, I see you're stressed about getting out the door. I know we're running late and you're probably feeling stressed, about that. Let's just start by putting your first shoe on. Like, and maybe that would help in those kind of heightened moments to like them connect like, oh, it's okay that I feel this way. And then, then maybe you could circle back to it at a different time to, especially with kids, circle back to it at a different time to bring it together of like, hey, this is what happened, maybe next time, what could we do different? I don't know. That's just a different. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I like how you shared to sit in those feelings, because I think in my generation we were taught you bury it and you move on. And how do you understand your feelings if you don't sit in them, if you don't feel it, to understand that is something that I feel uncomfortable with, or that is something that makes me sad, or if that is something that makes me angry. If you keep pushing it down, or you move it off to the side to work through it, or to find your happiness, you have to experience sad to know you're happy. You have to experience you're worried to know your accomplishments. And I think things work hand in hand that way, that sometimes we forget. I have one question, and it is something, Amanda, that you spoke about, and you talked about clenching. You know, I clench all the time. That's how my stress, especially, I wish Chad was here, I do it in my shoulders. That's where I hold my stress. So, Amanda, I wanted to ask you, what could I do sitting in a chair to relax my body, to get in a state of mind to feel it all disappear, so to speak? I know that there's no magical form, but just something that will help me slow down, conscious and aware of it. Because I think we hear these techniques and we hear these words or ideas. Hearing them and reading and doing are two different things. We do have to slow ourselves down to do it. How do we do that? How do I slow myself down to stop clenching?
Well, for me, and again, I know this might not work for everybody, I sit a lot, which causes, clenching, or if I'm reading something and I'm really involved in it, I find myself hunched over sometimes. So I've made a point to either stand at my desk, and this is at home. I know we can't always do that at work, but at home I can stand. Or I've set an alarm on my phone. So every so often throughout the day, I'll walk away from the computer, I'll stretch, I'll get something to drink, something to eat, and then refocus to be able to go back and complete my work. For me, that helps me, because same thing. I feel like I'm always tense, and same in my shoulders. I feel it the most. I also sometimes find myself like clenching, like you can clench your teeth if you're really like in tune with something or really involved. And the mindfulness part of it, one of my kids said to me one time, "Mom, like, what's wrong with you? You look so angry." And I was like, "I do? I'm not angry." And they're like, you look angry, your facial expression. So like that was another part of it, like just being mindful of not only how I, what I say and do, but like how I look too. So yeah, I'm still working on some of that myself. And it's a great point, because it's like, how can you help others if you're not mindful yourself?
Molly, do you have any recommendations?
Just in regards to where we carry stress. Is that what you're speaking about? Yeah.
Pardon me?
Just about like where we carry stress.
Yeah, and how do we
Yeah.
release it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I keep trying to bring this back to my lane of yoga. So, because that's my world. And so specifically in our yoga classes, we talk about mountain pose, or it's called powerful pose, where we use. If I stand up here a little bit, I'll back up.
There you go.
You can
Yep.
see my big belly here, baby belly. So powerful, we like to call it powerful pose, and it's just about opening up your chest and shoulders. And I mean, we're all sitting in front of a computer tonight here, and when we sit in front of our computers, we joke and we call it the pose of the iPhone user, where we
Yep.
spend so much of our time like this, and then whether you're on an iPhone or on a computer all day long, our shoulders are rounded. So just in what we work on in our class for physical posture is always finding powerful pose where you're opening up your shoulders are pressing down your back, and just opening this up. And it just feels good to stand like that. Like when I teach a class, little insider, you'll see if you come to one of my classes, I start the class standing like this because it gives me serotonin. It gives me the good drugs that we like to call them in our body naturally standing like this. So it helps me feel more confident. I like speaking from this position. You'll see a lot of public speakers talk about speaking this way too, but even just doing that, like just checking in with yourself throughout the day when you're sitting at your computer or whatnot, like Amanda mentions, just to stand up, move around, do some stretches, come into powerful pose, like let yourself feel good for a moment. That's like what we like to come back to. So
I've never heard of that, so
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so my studio is Wisconsin Power Yoga. We're located over in Burlington. Like I said, we have a very specific approach and style that we do there, but it's all super intentional, and we're obsessed about it, obviously. So it's a cool experience, and my biggest thing I tell people when they're like nervous about it and we're talking about it is honestly, you have to just come try it. I could talk to you about it all night, but you got to just come try it and experience it for yourself to see what I mean, I guess. So, yeah.
Wonderful. I think we are good in closing it up. If you have any other questions, or as the night progresses, you feel, oh, I should have asked this or this, please send me an email. I can make sure to connect you with our panelists. Thank you all very much for coming on board and sharing your expertise, sharing with our community. I liked the theme that was said, Sam. You spoke about back to basics. Back to basics. And I think that works in breathing and yoga and how we stand, just even how we stand. That is a basic. As Chad shared about being born, you don't realize how one move can affect our whole body, and to listen to the body, that basic thing, to listen to body, which speaks to our mind. If you have that feeling that something isn't right, reach out to an expert. Sam, when you spoke about your basic food groups, that's what helps create mindfulness or keeps us centered, and it basic to not add more stress. And Amanda, as you spoke, basics, just about breathing, just about being in the moment, be grateful. I think we live in a very busy world that we forget about the basics. So you folks brought us back to the basics, which brings us back to our mindfulness, which will help us during this holiday season that we are approaching. I wish you all very much a happy holidays. I thank you very much for coming on board tonight, listening to us, sharing with us. We will not have an In Conversation in December. We are taking a month off for the holidays, but please reach out to us and register for January 19th In Conversation event, which is fostering conversations with law enforcement. So get your questions ready. It's going to be engaging. They would like us to work in the community, work with them. And we get to learn about their training methods and what they do for the community. And on that note, you folks have a wonderful night. Thank you again for everything, and keep staying resilient. Thank you.